Good Tuesday morning, friends. I'm Pastor Ben Hayes from First Baptist Church, Dadeville, Alabama, bringing you our thought for the day today. What a beautiful day God has given us, a day He created especially for you to worship Him and to honor Him. So get your word and get His word, and let's open it up to Philippians chapter 4 and get this day going well. Now, I know many of you are watching this. It's probably after 9 o'clock when it posts, but it's 7:30 for me. I'm just starting my day at the church. Been up for several hours, but starting my day at the church. But this is a great way to do this, because we've been talking about in the book of Philippians the fact that Paul understands what it's like to have and to not have. He understands what it's like to be healthy and not healthy. He understands what it's like to be free and not free. And he says, I've learned to be content in all the things that happen, whether I'm suffering or whether I'm rejoicing. And he says, as we talked about yesterday, he can do all things through Christ who strengthens him. So can we. And that means that we can be happy in the midst of the sorrows and the trials and the tribulations. It means that we can serve him even when the going gets tough. And listen to what he says in verse 14. He's really complimenting these Philippian Christians. He says, "Nevertheless, you have done well that you shared in my distress." Now, I know that's a short verse, and it may not seem like it says a lot, but it really does. Now, think about this. How in the world could these Philippians share in his distress? He's in prison. He's struggling. He's hurting. He needs help. Not everybody is there to help him. He is really in a place where he is in the trials and tribulations of life. How can these Philippian Christians share in his distress? Well, one thing, they're also suffering persecution. Many of them have been arrested. They've faced ostracism from their families. They've lost their businesses, their homes. They're sharing in his distress in that way. Second, they're sharing in his distress because they're lifting him up in prayer. They are trusting the Father to take care of his needs. Listen, I'm going to tell you something. There's nothing that you can do that is any better for any fellow believer than to lift them up in prayer. When they're in the midst of difficult circumstances, they need your prayers. They need you to lift them up and to come to the Father before them. And I'm going to tell you, in those moments, you can literally feel the presence and the power of God as God's people lift you up in prayer. I've experienced that as a pastor, and that's why I ask folks all the time, pray for me. Pray for me. Pray that God gives me strength. Pray that God allows me to have a great quiet time, a time before Him. It was interesting the other day. One of our sweet ladies came to me and said, "Pastor, what can I pray for you?" And immediately I thought, you know, what I need more than anything right now is to be able to slow down and have a good, positive, quiet time. She went into our prayer room and she prayed. She came back and she said, "Pastor, I know what you need. You need to be still and know that He is God." And she said, "I've prayed for you, and He's going to give you a good night's rest tonight. He's going to give you some time to be quiet and still." And you know what? He did. He did. I mean, that is an amazing answer to prayer. So they've gone through the same things that Paul has gone through. They lifted him up in prayer during his distress. And now, at this moment, they have sent him a love offering. Now, I know that as we Baptists, we love to take love offerings. And, we've just come through our Pastor Appreciation Month, and I was so blessed by our church family, more blessed by the words that they shared with me and the cards that they wrote, more blessed by the fact that they loved on us on Sunday night. But I'm going to tell you, the gifts that they gave were so generous and such a blessing to us that we literally were overwhelmed with emotion because of it. There's just something about that. Paul says, look, I didn't really need it, because he said, I'm trusting in God and I've learned to be content in all that I have. But said, you have gone out of your way in the midst of your own struggles, in the midst of your own suffering, to take care of us. Now, I want to tell you one other story about that. And I'm not going to mention any names, but I'm going to tell you there was a card in the midst of all of those cards that we received on Sunday night that just stood out to me, that just blessed my heart. It was a card from a sweet couple who have had a rough year this year. And they said, "Pastor, we wish we could give you something. We wish we could give you a gift." I said, "But we can't." I said, "Things are tight. Things are hard right now." But we want you to know how much we appreciate you, how much we love you, how much we thank you for standing with us during those tough times. And I'm going to tell you what, I cried, I wept, and I have kept that card and I've thought about that card, and it has meant so much to me. Not because of anything that I could put my finger on, but just because the emotion and the appreciation was so sincere. So let me ask you to do something today. Some of you are members of my church, and I'm so thankful for you. And I'm not trying to be self-serving here, but I'm going to ask you, whether you're in my church or in another church, if I'm your pastor, if you've got another pastor, lift them up in prayer today. Give them a call and say, Pastor, I love you. Post on Facebook to them. Send them a card, a text, an email. Somehow just lift them up and say an encouraging, positive word to them, because we all need it in these difficult times. That's what Paul says. He says, I'm so grateful that you have done well. You have shared in my distress. I love you guys. Praying for you, and I'll see you back here tomorrow. God bless.